Good morning. Welcome to today's session where we'll be going deeper on an announcement that we heard yesterday that more steps are now available in Workflow Builder. And specifically, those new steps are going to help you connect other apps and services to your workflows. My name is Angela Kirchhof. I'm a senior product manager at Slack, leading workflows. Over the next 50 minutes, we're going to take a closer look at what's happening with Workflow Builder, Slack's no-code tool for automation. First, we'll take a look back at the past year of Workflow Builder and the way it's transforming teamwork and channels. And we'll hear stories from Slack customers that are using workflows today. We'll also take a closer look at how Slack apps can now offer workflow steps and how that exponentially increases the flexibility of workflows. Next, we'll hear directly from our partners who've been building alongside us and learn about why they are investing in workflow steps for their Slack app. And finally, we'll show you how to get going with workflows, whether you're a developer or a novice Slack user. So let's get started. So we launched Workflow Builder almost a year ago to help you automate your work inside of Slack. And for anyone learning about Slack for the first time, Slack is a channel-based messaging platform that replaces email inside of your company. Channels provide you and your team a shared view into the work that's being done. Because everyone in the channel has access to the same information, they can work in lockstep. And when new members join, it's much easier to get people up to speed so that they can start working. The shift to using channels as a way to keep people informed and coordinated in and of itself can transform how you work. But when you combine teamwork and channels with simple workflow automation, you can make Slack even more powerful. And that's what I'm here to tell you about today. Using Workflow Builder, you can automate tasks specific to your team without writing a single line of code. Builders can create channel-specific workflows that automatically run through a sequence of steps when triggered. And this comes in handy for things like onboarding new members of your team, handling requests, team stand-ups, and more. Creating workflows within Slack allows you to simplify coordination and communication across teams and channels. Workflow automation helps you unlock more value from your tools and processes. It does this first and foremost by saving you time as you streamline your daily tasks in Slack. You can automate reminders, messages, requests, and the process of getting new employees up to speed. Second, workflow automation reduces the back and forth by standardizing processes. And this allows your teams to set expectations around requests by automatically communicating next steps or timelines through Slack messages. And it also helps your team collect all of the right information up front when collaborating. And finally, workflow automation helps you customize Slack by creating workflows that are unique to your team and the tools they're using. These benefits tie together, enabling your teams to get the right people, the right information at the right time, so that your team can spend less time on the coordination and more time on the important work. So you can set up a workflow to kick off after a particular event that we call a trigger. Triggers can include events like a new person joining a channel, someone adding a reaction to a message, or someone clicking on the shortcuts menu in the message composer. You can also set up triggers that are based on the time of day or events fired from other services using a webhook. Once a workflow has been triggered, you can add custom logic about what happens next, whether that's sending messages or using forms to capture more information. You might want to use workflows to run a daily stand-up, to report status to the team, collect information after a customer phone call, or like DocuSign did, to onboard new employees. But DocuSign isn't the only customer that has adopted workflows to transform the way their teams work in channels. Since the launch of Workflow Builder a year ago, we've seen more than 175,000 people create more than 515,000 workflows, and those workflows have been launched more than 25 million times. We've also discovered that 77% of our builders are non-technical, and that means that every one of you listening to this has the ability to automate your work using Workflow Builder right now. But don't just take my word for it. Let's take a closer look at some of the workflows that Slack customers have built to do just that. When technology security company McAfee transitioned its entire organization to work from home in response to COVID-19, executives wanted to keep communication between employees and leadership open and active. So they used Workflow Builder. And using Workflow Builder, they designed a solution to have an Ask Me Anything session, or an AMA, hosted by the Vice President and General Manager of the Consumer Cloud Divisions. The AMA workflow they built resulted in a high degree of engagement between employees and executives. And most importantly, it was easy to build and use. It was so easy, according to McAfee, that their executive was able to self-moderate the entire session. Another example that illustrates a common way customers are using workflows comes from Noom, a health and lifestyle company. Noom used Workflow Builder to automate new hire onboarding in a way that decreases each new hire orientation by 30 minutes. And that saves its coaching operation team 2 hours a month. Using Workflow, new hires get access to material prior to their first day on the job, and they're able to review key content and complete pre-work in a self-paced way. This not only results in time saved for the coaching staff, but it also fosters connection among new employees who are 100% engaged with the workflow and plugged into a support network in the new hire channels, easing their transition into the company. And finally, we're going to learn about how Snowflake, a data warehousing company, uses Workflow Builder to automate surveys for their employees. Using an emoji reaction-triggered workflow that asks someone to complete a survey, members can share feedback without having to context switch or flip between different tools or applications. They used a form that included mandatory fields in order to standardize the kind of feedback they were looking for from employees. And this helped provide consistency across feedback categories, and it moved work forward since a workflow automatically sends the feedback in real time. There's no additional action needed from an employee or a manager. So now let's hear directly from one of our earliest adopters of Workflow Builder. Welcome Joe, the Associate Director of DevOps at Hearst, who's going to talk about how his team is pushing the limits of what's possible with workflows.
Hi, I'm Joe Lodato. I'm the Associate Director of DevOps for Hearst Magazine's media. We've been using the Slack platform for roughly 5 years now. We have all our releases, deployments, adding or removing users from different SaaS products, tons of Slack bots in our catalog. Slack has been great because we've been cutting out the need for email, and everything's just right in chat for us. So it's real good a tool for us in our company. Some of the current stuff we do is basically all releases and deployments. So we have people creating releases, as you can see in the screenshots over here. We see when people are pushing to the master branch on GitHub. We have different bots deploying to different environments, running load tests. So, basically you're merging and things are going through the CI pipeline. It's really nice. Everybody sees everything, everything's happening. Things are rolling back if they're failing automated tests, things along those lines. You can even set variables in Slack through some of the tools we have. Secrets are set in a different window, as you can see on the bottom left slide here. You could see as you're deploying things, variables changing, things along those lines. Another tool we have is a user management tool, which is great for onboarding and offboarding users to different SaaS products. As you can see in this example here, we're adding somebody to GitHub. So we have GitHub, Datadog, Slack, tons of different tools that we can add through these bots. But we knew about workflows at Hearst, but we never really looked into it. We found ourselves asking for information from users over and over and over again. It was wasting everybody's time. We were wasting time with, what is your email? What's your GitHub username? Should it be read? Should it be write access? And then every different product needed different information from the users. So there was email, GitHub username, the list goes on. And we didn't realize it was a chance to automate our automation. So it was kind of sitting around. But here's one of the things we did. Instead of having to run that command that needed all that information, we basically have a Slack workflow here on the left. You can input what's your team, what organization you need access to. If you need read or write, your GitHub username, and then your email. And then the Slack workflow pops up with a message that says, is this approved? Somebody clicks approve, which fires off this message, says, okay, we have an approved GitHub access request with the data we need. And then we have a bot running in the background that basically processes this Slack event and automatically adds the person to the API, which adds the person to the different SaaS products we have. So basically, this auto reply bot here is in the Slack channel processing events. We use it for tons of different offerings. Just anytime somebody asks for something that maybe they shouldn't need to do or this or that, we just process a message. So somebody doesn't have to be on call and saying, oh, no, we don't do that. It's this bot is doing it. So we repurposed this bot auto reply for this. We're triggering off this approved GitHub access request and sending it along to the API. It's not only saving the DevOps team time, but it's saving the whole organization time. We have it for a bunch of different workflows, Jira, Datadog, GitHub, the list goes on and on. So basically the people aren't waiting around after they submit the form. Somebody on the DevOps team just clicks that approve button and they have their access. There's no back and forth. We haven't saved the same amount of time that we have saved with the bots, obviously, because people aren't requesting access a lot all day. We have hundreds of microservices for the Slack apps that's, constantly being used. So we're saving a lot of time there, but we could be saving, about an hour a week, which is 52 hours a year, which is really nice. Anytime we can get time savings and automation in our tools, it's a win for us. But we did kind of reach the limits of what Slack workflows can do. Since we're parsing all the events in the channel, it's not optimal. Slack did just release steps for apps, which is basically going to be able to cut out our middleman bot. So instead of the auto reply bot parsing the specific events, we can have the workflow send right to our other API, which processes the user. Which should be nice because this auto reply bot is processing events in a ton of different rooms. So it's totally not the perfect scenario, but we're excited for steps for apps, and we're excited for for Slack workflows to continue. So I'm going to send it back to Angela so she can talk a little bit more about steps for apps.
Thanks, Joe. We just heard that Hearst is starting to see the benefits of workflow automation, even with a focused set of capabilities. But yesterday, we announced new steps available in Workflow Builder, steps from apps. Developers can now add custom steps to their Slack apps. And when those apps are installed in your workspace, your Workflow Builder step library transforms. Finally, Workflow Builder is no longer stuck in Slack. Steps from apps allow you to create workflows that connect with your external tools, extending workflow automation beyond channels in your workspace. And the value that you get from extending automation with Workflow Builder presents itself in a few ways. First, steps from apps bring disparate tools together into the flow of work that happens in channels, giving you even more ways to increase the return on investment on not just Slack, but the rest of your software stack as well. Second, apps are now more flexible in Workflow Builder, since they can live within any desired workflow, driving greater utility for you and your teams. Integrations are no longer defined solely by the developer, but now they offer building blocks for deeper customization. And third, you no longer need to think of apps as their own separate entities. You can build a workflow that combines multiple apps into one streamlined and automated process. So there's now more compatibility, and apps can work together within a single workflow. So developers of both custom apps and directory apps can create steps that will drive deeper automation of your work. We're going to look at an example of each. So first, this is a screenshot of one of my personal workflows, which utilizes a custom step that was created for our Slack workspace. The custom step updates my Slack status every weekday at 11 a.m., which is when I sign off and take over my daily childcare shift for a couple of hours. I no longer have to go through those extra few steps to change my status before I close my laptop. I let Workflow Builder handle the pesky context switching so I can stay focused on my most important work. So you can build these kinds of steps too. You can create a step that randomly selects a member of a channel, or maybe a step that adds an emoji reaction to a message, or maybe even a step that spins up a new Slack channel. These are all custom steps that are available to start building today. Now we're going to take a look at the type of steps you might find from your favorite services in our app directory. So one of the most basic and common workflows you can build is gathering information through a form. And now you can use a step from the Google Sheets app to send information from the workflow directly into a spreadsheet. This could come in handy for any ongoing information you're collecting that you want to store outside of Slack for easy filtering, analysis, and queries. So we saw how I use workflows with a custom step in my personal life, but for my day job, I'm a product manager, and something I'm always doing is triaging product feedback. We use workflows in our channels to gather customer feedback, and all of that feedback is posted into the channel for visibility and transparency. But when it comes time for quarterly planning, I spend a lot of time exporting, formatting, and cleaning up CSV files in order to remove duplicates and ensure I've captured the right details. And that time would be doubled if I had more than one form that I needed to merge into a single spreadsheet. So now there's a better way to find and analyze that information. I can use a workflow step from Google Sheets. It's the perfect way to store, filter, and query the collective feedback in order to inform my roadmap. With steps from Google Sheets, I can send the data collected in the form directly to a spreadsheet using the Add a Row step. As a builder, I'll connect my Google account, select a destination spreadsheet, and map the information I've collected throughout the workflow to specific columns in my sheet. As the workflow runs, the information is piped into my spreadsheet automatically. No more continuous CSV exports and data cleanup required, saving me a ton of time doing tedious work. In addition to Google Sheets, you can check out more apps with steps available in Workflow Builder in the Workflows collection in the Slack app directory. And now I'm excited to let you hear from some of the developers with Slack apps in the directory who are here to tell you about their journey building workflow steps. First, I'd like to welcome Bilal, the CTO and co-founder of Poly, who's going to talk a bit about why they chose to build workflow steps.
Hi, I'm Bilal Ajazi, and I'm co-founder and CTO at Poly. Poly is an engagement app purpose-built for Slack to help teams get feedback from their peers. Users can quickly and accurately capture information in real time, and it's dead simple so that anyone can send to Poly in just a few clicks. Customers use us from scenarios ranging from stand-ups to pulsing and IT ticketing feedback. When we started building for Slack more than 5 years ago, we did so because that's where the most innovative users in enterprise were. They were people who wanted to try new things, had a taste for good products, and were willing to evangelize a better way of working. Slack had a different logo and was clearly early on the adoption curve and poised to grow. The zeal and enthusiasm of those early users is what led to product growth for products like ours, that were leveraging the platform to build experiences that were built from the ground up for Slack. Those users had a lot of guts, considering the app UX pretty much didn't have any of the features we know and love today, like block kit, modals, and even emoji reactions. Thank you so much to those users for trying out new things and keeping innovation going. Fast forward to the present, and Slack is a much bigger ecosystem serving a wider umbrella of users. The innovators like those are still around and still pushing boundaries on better ways to work, which in many cases has led them to workflows. You can think of the Slack customer journey as a graduation of steps. Users start with messages and jump into apps as they encounter them. More recently, as a simple way to automate routine processes at your company, Workflows helps unlock wins for those users and helps them make them not just themselves, but also their colleagues more productive. Those early adopters and evangelists are still the types of users we want to be building for as a startup living on Slack. And so we were really excited to build for the next step in the journey and get a workflow step together for Poly. At Poly, we're long on the power of workflows generally. Poly is most powerful when people are collecting feedback in response to a process at the company, which is exactly what Workflow Builder enables. As we were thinking about how to approach our implementation of a workflow step, we stopped to look at the parts of Poly that made the most sense to tie into a step. For us, it was the concept of a template, namely the ability to save off a version of a future Poly that you would like to send. Templates enabled us to capture feedback on the same type of question over time to produce comparable results and allow trend analysis. Looking at that data over time is fundamentally what helps drive better business outcomes. After all, what is measured can be optimized. Templates also happen to be a huge driver of our core value prop at Poly because they enable sticky use cases that lead to a more engaged user base. Ultimately, when deciding to build on a new feature, that's what platform partners should be looking at, how to align value with their user base to that of the platform. Our goal was to broaden the base of Poly users that could use templates. We did this by making it possible to select not just a user's existing template, but also templates out of the Poly global template library, where we've accumulated the most popular and valuable templates across our user base. The library has the shared best practices across millions of users that make it easy for, say, a comms professional looking to increase employee engagement to pick up our anonymous all-hands meeting prep template and tie it to a dedicated channel where topics and questions are triaged ahead of each meeting. The anonymity afforded by this experience fosters a culture of open feedback while still providing a safe space for moderation. Tie this to the action button on the all-hands channel, and anybody in the company can visit and share their feedback ahead of the next all-hands. Super simple. Circling back, the adoption curve mentioned earlier still applies. It's just occurring in a different part of the ecosystem. The most excited users, the ones who are willing to try new things and push boundaries, are now looking at Workflow Builder. This is a fundamentally creative space, and the story is yet to be written here. I'm looking forward to what users and developers build together in this exciting new service. Back to you, Angela.
Thanks, Bilal. Now we're going to hear from Mya, a product manager at PagerDuty. So we just talked to Bilal about how important it is to build where your users are, and Mya is going to talk about how they invested in workflow steps in order to help minimize context switching.
Thanks, Angela. Hi, I'm Mya, a PagerDuty Integrations Product Manager, and I'll be sharing PagerDuty's workflow step trigger incident and some helpful tips for choosing the best steps for builders and end users. An always-on world requires a proactive and preventive approach to managing your digital operations system. PagerDuty gives you real-time visibility into your critical apps and services right where you work. And when business-impacting issues do strike, PagerDuty ensures the appropriate teams are notified in Slack with incident management actions at their fingertips. PagerDuty identifies incidents by collecting data signals from anywhere and interpreting those signals using machine learning. However, many incidents are created by internal teams during investigation and collaboration. PagerDuty's new workflow step, Trigger Incident, connects Slack's channel collaboration to PagerDuty's incident resolution. Slack's Workflow Builder plus PagerDuty provides customers with streamlined incident initiation. Now let's dive into PagerDuty's Trigger Incident step for workflows. After the Slack Workflow Builder adds PagerDuty's Trigger Incident step to a Slack workflow and connects their PagerDuty account, the builder will be prompted to configure incident variables. Builders can select the impacted PagerDuty service and assign variables for incident title and description. These variables can be pulled from Slack messages or a previous Slack form. Lastly, our step will share PagerDuty's incident title, description, URL, and other details for use in the remaining workflow. Developing this workflow step was quick and easy, but deciding what to build was a small challenge. Here's some food for thought when determining what steps is best for your customers. When brainstorming what workflow step would bring the most value to a builder and end Slack user, we tried to answer these 4 questions. What customer actions are key for your platform? This action will always be needed by end users and can be easily plugged into many workflows by builders. Can this action be completed without interruption and in that instance? Slack workflows are designed to be reliable, streamlined processes that improve end user productivity. If a single step is error-prone, the workflow cannot be depended on and have drastic downstream impacts. How can this action be packaged in a bite-sized step? Smaller configurable steps give Slack workflow builders more flexibility and control when building a workflow. And lastly, once the step is complete, what information can the workflow share between steps and thus tools? Collaboration is key, and this is not just for Slack users. Communication between Slack's apps increases automation, enables data sharing, and ensures a process can be fully completed without end user input. Using these helpful hints and questions, Slack workflow development teams will be able to build steps that are easy to plug in by developers and widely used by end consumers. Now I hand it back to Angela.
Thanks, Mya. We know that for developers, there's more to your day-to-day than reporting incidents. A key follow-on activity is monitoring dashboards throughout the duration of an incident. So we're going to hear from Natalie, a product manager at Datadog, about a workflow step that would help you do just that.
Thanks, Angela. I'm Natalie. I'm a product manager at Datadog, and today I'm going to be telling you a little bit about building your Slack workflows with Datadog. It's 2 a.m., and my phone starts paging about increased errors from payments on the checkout service on my web app. As an engineer, it's my responsibility to quickly figure out what's going on, fix it, and get back to sleep as soon as possible. Every minute matters, especially when delays on checkout can lead to decreased number of purchases made. And when the support team starts getting messages about customers unable to complete their purchases, it's time to start acting fast. The first thing I do is open my dashboard for the web app. During the day, my team and I use this to make sure the system looks stable. These are benchmarks for how we expect the app to perform. But right now, this dashboard will also show how bad things are. How many users are affected? How widespread is this incident? Do we need to escalate to any other teams? Customer impact has been identified and an incident has already been called by the time I'm woken up. But since I'm the on-call engineer, I'm now the incident commander and need to quickly get up to speed. I start messaging a few other teammates in a channel about the degraded service. At Datadog, copy and pasting dashboard widgets into our channels is a crucial part of troubleshooting an incident. It allows us to make sure our teammates know how the service is performing throughout the incident and helps others dig deeper into related issues they might be chasing down and make sure everyone is aligned. During this particular incident, since it's customer-facing and millions of dollars are potentially on the line, we share our main service level indicator. This measures the difference between how we want the service to perform against its actual observed performance right now. We have service level agreements with our customers for the general uptime of the service. And while service is degraded, we're in breach of this contract. This is why it's of utmost importance for the team to always know how long our customers have been impacted and continue to sprint to mitigating the issue and resolving customer impact as soon as we can. With the new Datadog workflow step, we can now automate this. A snapshot of our SLI can automatically be sent to our incident channel every 5 minutes until we resolve the incident. This is a custom escalation flow, specifically for how we do incident management at Datadog. We went from a page in the middle of night in PagerDuty to calling an incident and using our new custom workflow, allowing us to share key performance metrics that include all the important information my team and I need when we need it, specifically tailored to our own workflow. Let's walk through what setting this up might look like in another scenario. Each week, on Monday morning, my team and I sit down and go through how our services performed over the last week. We can now automate this process to automatically send a new message to our team every Monday morning with the new information that we need. First, we'll want to create a new workflow. We'll call it Web Store Team SLO. Then we'll choose a trigger. Since we care about this workflow once a week, on Monday morning, we can choose the workflow to trigger on a schedule. Now, starting next Monday and every Monday after that, the workflow will trigger at 9 a.m. Now, let's add the Datadog workflow step. First, we can select the channel we want this message to go to and the dashboard that we want the widgets from. Then we can select a saved view filtered specifically to the context that we care about, and then the widget from that dashboard. Then, right before we hit save, we can preview a snapshot of this widget right now before it's saved as a new workflow and sent to any channel. And that's it. We've now successfully created a new Slack workflow that includes all of the context from your Datadog dashboards right into your Slack workflows. And on Monday morning, when you wake up, information about how that service is performing is waiting for you in a message in your team channel. With these new steps, you can now customize your Slack workflows to exactly the way you and your team already work. With more time spent working and less on process, you can minimize the time to repair and spend more time focusing on the things that are important. Get started today by building steps from Datadog as part of your Slack workflows, now available in Workflow Builder. Thank you, and I'll hand it back over to Angela.
Thanks, Natalie. And of course, I know that not everyone will need to automate an incident workflow. So next, I'll invite Ryan, a product manager from Zapier, to show you a preview of what's possible for other workflows using steps from Zapier.
Thanks, Angela. Hey, y'all. Ryan from Zapier. Today, I'm going to talk about how the app we created gives Slack users access to more than 100 steps from over 20 different apps. But for those of you that don't know, Zapier is a tool that moves info between your web apps automatically, so you can focus on your most important work. Our platform has more than 2,000 apps, and we integrate with Facebook, ActiveCampaign, Google Sheets, Salesforce, and many more. Zapier shares a similar mission to the workflow team at Slack. We both want to save workers time by automating those tedious tasks. So by putting the power of Zapier directly into Slack, we're moving both our missions forward. If there's one thing I want the builders to take away today, it is any use case is possible. If you're wondering if Slack workflows is flexible and dynamic enough for you, trust the team at Zapier. It is. Now, any knowledge worker can attest that there are not enough hours in the day to get your work done. We all need to accomplish more with fewer resources. That is the problem my team set out to solve when building Steps by Zapier. We enabled Steps for some of the most popular ways users can save time. This includes apps from task management, project management, spreadsheets, email, and CRM. We learned a lot during this process, and here are a few tips for the builders out there on how we did it. For the designers, get creative with Slack's UI framework, known as BlockKit. Our app relies on heavy usage of images to achieve our ideal user experience. With so many apps and steps supported, this means a lot of images. So what you're seeing here is an image service we built that automatically generates all the images our design requires. Therefore, as we add more steps to Slack, our app design will scale. Tip number 2 is make it interactive. There are plenty of components to add interactivity to your app. In order for Zapier steps to dynamically populate fields, what you're seeing here, we use select menus from the component collection to pull in data directly from Zapier's APIs. And finally, feel free to go off script. These are some designs we shared with the team at Slack around enhancements that could one day be made to the UI framework. The team has been very receptive to that feedback, and we continue to see them iterate on the platform. So let's see Steps by Zapier in action. I'm going to share 2 example multi-app, multi-step workflows that allow users to work smarter, not harder. In this first example workflow, a manager has requested some analysis be done by a stakeholder. The workflow is started with a user reacting to the message with an emoji. Then Zapier creates a Todoist task to perform analysis for the stakeholder. And finally, Zapier creates an Airtable record to monitor this work in the team's project tracker. Let's take a look at another example. In this one, a sales rep is made aware of a new opportunity. The workflow starts with a rep activating a custom shortcut. Zapier then creates a deal in Pipedrive and adds the manager as a follower to the deal. And lastly, Zapier creates an Asana task to remind the rep to follow up in a week on this new deal. This is only a taste of what's possible with Steps by Zapier, but it goes to show how Slack's workflow steps can accommodate any number of use cases. I encourage all of you to explore Steps from Apps and help users remove those productivity roadblocks. All right, Angela, back to you.
Thanks, Ryan. So now you've seen what's possible when it comes to building steps for Workflow Builder. Before we let you loose to start creating, I want to share a few best practices when it comes to building your workflow steps. First, plan ahead and think through the builder's experience when it comes to step configuration, and always communicate as much as possible with builders. Design an experience that's easy to understand for people building workflows who are relying on a no-code tool that's easy to understand. Next, unbundle actions in order to make your step as specific as possible. And make your step flexible. It's impossible to think of all the ways in which your step could be combined with others in a workflow. So make sure your step can work with any trigger and step. And one of the best ways to do this is to utilize inputs and outputs from the workflow. Make sure your step can accept workflow-specific information as inputs and provides new information to be used later on in the workflow as outputs. So if you are ready to build custom workflow steps, you can join us later today where you'll actually get to build along with a workflow builder, designer, and engineer to code a workflow step. Check out our API documentation, and you can even jumpstart your own workflow step using our sample code. Now, if you're not a developer and you want to get up and going with Workflow Builder, please join us for our session next, where you can learn the basics of building workflows. You can also see which steps are available in Workflow Builder through Slack apps at our directory, and you can get inspired with pre-built workflow templates. That's all for today. Thanks for joining us, and we can't wait to see what you build.